Hey YouTube, it's your boy Strictly Broken here. I hope you can all hear me. Testing, everyone can hear. That's good. That's good. And today, well, first of all, we're back at it now with the Strictly Locals. I forgot what I called it, but it's all good. It's all good. And today, for the new season, I guess season 2 in a sense, I'm joined by a special guest. I'll let him introduce himself for himself.
Hey, Butts and Coconuts here. Invited by UA to be on this video. Happy to be here. You can check out my content at links in the description.
All right, I'll link all your stuff, your blog, your YouTube's good stuff. He made a new YouTube channel, has some really good content on it. I really like it. So yeah, today's strictly local VOD or whatever it's called, is a match between AOT, played by yours truly on the left, versus Railgun on the right. And I already briefed Uncle Butts on those two decks. It's also a bit of a high stakes game. We're playing for cards that you saw a little bit earlier. Some SPs, total value about 40 US, 50 Canadian. So a little bit high stakes. It's definitely a very stressful game.
Yeah. I would assume that this is a matchup as well where Aaron and mobility gear aren't as important in the early game.
Yeah.
So I haven't really thought about Titan in context to where it lands in Japanese here. But there's definitely a lot more stuff where you don't get to be as oppressive because there's like good decks that don't need to reverse. But Aaron is still a +2 in those situations anyway. So I'm interested to see this match. That was a wonderful mulligan you made.
Yeah, deciding to dish the 1-0 because we play the salvage Ricky anyways, so you always get it back. And I just want to see wins, man.
Yeah, that's pretty smart. Uh,
I didn't see what the Railgun player dished, but it included level assist, so
yeah, you could assume that it's level assist or 1-0 pieces because railgun usually there. Like early game railgun hand sculpting is a little weird because you end up dropping your level 1 pieces because you assume you're going to combo it back because you're aggressively trying to find your combo in your stock soul. Railgun does not get a runner. That kind of sucks.
yeah. I mean, is that Harué as good of a? If it's not runner, is that the best turn one player? No, not even close.
I don't even really like that card. Oh, there's a wind.
Oh, hits the runner to damage. Good player. Oh,
Oh, nice. Like finding your combo is nice for Harue, but it's something I would prefer to like maybe play on my second turn alongside a runner that already plussed for me. And like I play four runners and two 4K beaters anyway, so I guess I would rather see my 4Ks before the Harue. But I guess in like as a third choice, I'd rather attack with Harue than a Brainstorm or a Kuriko.
do you think that like the 4K should be an auto include in the list, or is it like an
Uh, I think that's like a flex slot. Railgun, even though Railgun is pretty hard on like 3 to 4 copies of all the combat campaign stuff, there's still a fair amount of flex slots for the deck. I like the 4Ks because it's just another like plussing card. Like some people play Takatsubo, but I don't like Takatsubo because it can't attack the turn you use it, and like your back row ends up being pretty important anyway. So it's like a hard card to use because you can't Takatsubo on the turn you're going to combo and get your ideal field setup without having to play over stuff. So it kind of like defeats the purpose, I think. Also, this guy's playing doors, and I don't think that's right.
excuse me
But
there. Sorry.
what's up?
Oh my
Yeah, but to summarize, like I like the 4Ks just because in a lot of situations, unless your opponent plays bombs. Like this would be a bad example because this is your same build. You're playing 4 stock bombs, but 4K is a pretty decent number to be at.
I mean, yeah, it's just I feel like I don't know if you touched on this. I had to go charge up the computer, but like against AOT, 4K is just not the most menacing thing at all in general. Even level 1 4K is not menacing at all against
Yeah.
stock bombs.
Uh, but like I also like made my deck choices a while ago before AOT was even out, so it's hard to comment on that specifically. But I'd agree. Like center slot with an Armin, that's 4 or 5. You have stock bombs. You can use the stock bomb to give something power. Uh, it's not great.
So this is like a big thing that once people play against AOT more, I think they'll realize as soon as your deck is the one to hit one first, it actually feels like the thing. If AOT hits one first, it's
Oh,
good. But if you hit one first, it's also great for the AOT player because you feel incentivized to combo off, and then I could just get triple or double reverse, right? It's
you kind of cut out there, and you said like when AOT hits one first, and then I didn't hear anything, and then
oh
you said like double, triple reverse.
I was just saying how like it doesn't really matter whether you hit one first or second because AOT like if the opponent hits one first, they feel really confident they're gonna do at least two reverses, sometimes three. If they hit one first, they can pick your zeros. So it's like almost like a win-win. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand that. I'm trying to build this deck, but I haven't gotten all the cards together yet or made proxies, so I'm curious to see how that pans out. But I've been thinking about that a lot. Um, and most of my games against AOT, uh, played a very awkward one this weekend where my opponent, like, he played win 3 turns in a row, and I think he only salvaged the event twice because he just never had wins in it, or he never had the event in his discard. And I was playing Sunshine, the 2 soul build, so I don't really care about the reverse denial.
Yeah, that's probably like a weaker matchup for AOT. That's for sure. I think.
Yeah, and like I side anyway. But like siding versus fronting, as far as Aaron living, it like doesn't really matter because Aaron doesn't do on play stuff. But it might matter because you might not want that Aaron's on field anymore. You never know.
So you see that interesting card in the back of the Railgun player. It's a global 5, and I think it's pay 1. I can't side on opponent on my turn. It makes
Yeah,
it
like
like
you like pick a lane, and I oh god, I haven't thought about that card since it got spoiled like 4 years ago. Um, it's a weird one.
do you
Yeah, but
think
this. Oh,
so-
go ahead.
do you think like that card has any like application that's like interesting or relevant?
Mm, not really, because I feel like forcing them to front, like Railgun is already kind of wally, so you can like, well, one, I'd rather have old man like that back row because it's really hard to triple reverse Railgun if they have like double combo in the 6/5 and they have an old man. Like some decks can do it, sure, but I think most conventional decks where at level 1 they'll probably be at around 7K. I think that's a difficult situation to try to overpower Railgun from. And if they side you, then they're doing less damage and you're keeping your cards anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So yeah, I think I know he plays old man, but I guess he has an SP and it's in his deck. You know.
I mean, the benefit of Railgun and the 1/0 combo is you get to just kind of play stuff. You get to be really toolboxy. So if that's a card that he enjoys and he's found success with, then yeah, by all means he can go for it. But it's not something I've ever considered testing.
So at this point, I remember this game. I had 3 climaxes in hand, and that's where this card is just the god card.
Oh, nice brainstorm. Um, Yeah. Do you know if you have the wind right now?
Yeah, I do have the win. So I was about
Okay.
to pop off.
Yeah, he searched punch, and I don't feel like doing math right now, but I think you're okay, right?
Yeah, if I have the global, which I don't remember if I did or not, like that's just the math is kind of irrelevant when the
Yeah.
global is involved.
But like this situation though, like if he had old man, I think the math would be a bit more relevant.
Maybe, but I just strike with the. It's funny because the railgun, that beater on the left side of his board, it's like so bad against AOT because AOT doesn't really play the second back row like half the time. Like in this
I
case,
think it's matchup dependent,
yeah,
obviously, but you could, yeah, you could make the beater worse. But if he like, so if he has punch and old man, he could, even if you attack the bigger thing first, his combo would be 8-5, which,
7-5, right?
well, no, it'd go up to 7K, then he punches because the punch is 1500 at level
Uh,
one. Oh, but yeah, yeah, if you have stock bomb, then never mind. Yeah, that's a pretty good card. And I was going to comment that it was probably good he didn't have a thing in the center lane because of the Aaron brainstorm, but I guess there's no way to win.
yeah, dude, the cards are just too good. These
Yeah, because
cards.
like how big? Like Aaron's like 9K in this situation with full field and the global 1K.
Yeah, 6-5, 7-5, 8-5, 8-5. Yeah, 8-5. I remember I had two wins in hand. So what my plan was I only have like five cards left in deck, right? So I was gonna do something with the move counter next turn after the Aaron bounces to get my second Aaron and just play through like that. Like that's a typical thing AOT will do, right? Chain first Aaron into more Aarons if they have two wins, and
Right.
that's just busted. Like that interaction's completely like too strong.
I mean, like that's how it feels to play Sunshine, I think.
I mean,
What I end up doing in that deck is I don't care if I only have one ruby the first time. Like you're just pretty likely to get another two soul between pants and the nature of your combo. Like if that makes sense.
yeah, like it filters so much that you're more
Yeah.
favored to trigger another pants to grab a two soul. It's
Yeah,
really
since
good.
you don't randomize your deck, you just go through what your deck's current order is. Um, so it's like maybe I get another ruby or maybe I get Akatsuki. I find a way to get another ruby. I got another two soul last turn and my ruby bounced because it's ridiculously in your favor to bounce ruby. Uh, so yeah, I could totally imagine it being a common play to get your move counter and using the move counter to find another Aaron and then doing double Aaron or triple Aaron the turn after.
Yes, it's so good, man. Cause like even if you proactively use the move counter, it's kind of like a move counter that you'll just get back. Like the combo's a +2, but oftentimes the net value ends up being a +1. But the +1 being like this infant, like it toolboxes your whole deck during the main phase.
Yeah.
It's just
And I was actually thinking about this earlier, like the difference between the move counter and the SAO event that just got spoiled today.
yeah,
If you don't mind me dating basically when we did this video. Uh you can't even use the SAO event to like bounce a character and reuse it on play because it
ah,
has to bounce a battling character. But like the search on the move counter doesn't matter. Uh, it says battling character for moving, but you could search whatever, which is really stupid. And uh, I think I think that's maybe an oversight on Bushiroad making the cards. Like, what do you think?
yeah.
Well,
I
because
think it's
like I think they because like the move counter thing's really cool. It feels like the show, I guess. That's like why Attack on Titan has all these running cards because it's like them like swinging around on the zipline stuff.
yeah.
But then with this set two stuff, just how Aaron works, how as long as you have wins, you will always have Aaron's, and how like the 3D mobility gear, it's like worse than a drop searcher in card economy but it's costless, and your errands plus you so much it doesn't really matter if you play like a bunch of them in a game.
I
Like
liken
it,
it to the bomb in ReZero. You know what I'm saying? Like you feel me on that? It's just
yeah.
it's
Like when that card, when the Bomb and ReZero is good, it's really good. But this event just has so many like other things going for it, I think. And it's like all centered around the Aaron because there's like the Krista combo that also salvages the event, but she's probably just going to die or whatever. But Aaron will never die.
yeah. So he calls out the Harue with the combo. I don't know if that's. I don't know how he's gonna approach this because I have people called it in front of a stock suicider. Uh,
Yeah, he could give it a level with the brainstorm and attack over the suicider though, pretty safely.
which he didn't, I think.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't remember him doing that. I didn't even realize that the brainstorm becomes a level. Like I don't play Railgun that much, but that would be a really sick play.
Yeah.
He's kind of
Um.
debating on whether to side, I guess.
Yeah. Uh. Could be something he missed though. Like, I wasn't there. I can't hear the audio, so he might not even assign the power. Because a lot of the times, like 500 power isn't that big of a deal. But this time, like though, the level is a pretty interesting thing to consider
Hmm.
with Uiharu.
So I remember in the game, he was telling me later, he ends up striking with the other two lanes first before attacking with the Harue because he wanted to delay. Like, he just didn't want to stall, right? But he just didn't know what to do. And he just ended up. But, like, when you attack Aaron before, like, so say you attack Aaron and it's not the last attack, it's actually really weak because you actually give me the flexibility of, like, using a move counter, if you know what I mean.
Right.
So he'll, like, attack into my Aaron. I'll bounce Aaron, and now I have an open slot.
Yeah, and then you can move counter profitably. Hmm.
He's, like, thinking about it pretty hard.
Ooh,
He, like,
for 4. Oh,
easy.
good at Weiss. Oh, this is the most difficult decision of his life. Oh,
So
let's see.
he decides on the side. Um,
Yeah,
it's it. Sorry.
I think that I would just plus level and crash, because with your specific board setup, like if he really values the search with your specific board setup, and I assume he values the search because he got off the combo. Um, you can't unless you like play over one of your back row dudes. You can't actually stock reverse his memory searcher in this scenario.
Yeah, I'm
And
like
if
a whole 1K bigger than him. Yeah, I can't possibly. Yeah.
yeah, but in like any other scenario, like if this was like if that thing was in a side lane or it was a different deck that didn't have like plus 2k power on the player's turn, then I think citing a memory or citing a stock or bottom deck or whatever reverser would just be really bad.
Yeah. Like he gives me a +1, and it's just like
And
yeah.
and then he like would lose the value from his character. But in this scenario, I don't want to say he's lucky because I think he planned for that. But like matchup wise, it's lucky that he was able to play it out like this.
Hmm? Yeah. Oh, chaining wins. Oh boy, GG easy.
Yeah,
I
it's,
actually held the win on the like I held the win past the refresh. I think it's worth doing in a deck like AOT. I don't know how many other decks want to hold their combo like 2 times over,
yeah.
but
Well, Aaron, you're basically guaranteed more combos unless they field something so big you can't reverse it on your next turn. Um, but just the nature of Aaron, like bouncing to your hand, uh, and like if you hold the move counters you got from your first turn of Aaron's, you could just kind of play those and search out. So you'll always have like the salvage target, and you'll always have the attackers. You just need the climax. It's not like you're playing like Two Love Brew or something where you just search more copies of Mekon or to search hand encore fodder for your next bar turn, it's like no resources for you to do this, which is
it's
pretty insane.
it feels like it often feels like a wid like a cycle. Like you're just going Aaron move counter, climax cycle, Aaron move. You know, it's like a loop, and it's just
Yeah.
you basically have like a loopable level 1 game, which is kind of like Sunshine, kind of like AOT. Those are really strong 1 games right now.
Yeah, I play the Two Soul Sunshine deck a lot. It's very hard to have a game where you don't play multiple Two Souls consecutively, just between Tants and the nature of your combo and just, drawing climaxes because it's so hard for the Ruby not to bounce to your hand. So then Ruby is also a +2 like Aaron in the sense that they both they'll plus you 1 on your turn, and then during your opponent's turn, you'll plus again. But Ruby has a little chance of failure, and Ruby you have to pay a stock, where Aaron it's just all free except for he needs a reverse. So that's like the bouncing thing. Pay 1 plus versus requiring your opponent to plus. That's how I like to say it.
And selection, I guess. But move counter selects everything, so it's like it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, but I don't think it really matters for Sunshine either, because your selection is weaker, but you're just looking for cards, and you'll kind of slowly sculpt out your end game between Akatsuki and Brainstorm, and just sometimes you Ruby the right cards, and you'll just like draw the right cards, and you don't have to worry about finding playables, because the Rubies and Maris returning to your hand are your playables until 3.
Good deck, good deck.
Yeah.
Thinking of playing it for Nats actually.
Sunshine?
Yep.
Oh. Do you have it?
Yep. Dude, I'm a store,
Okay.
man.
I know you're a store, but that doesn't mean you have every card.
That's true. That's true. That's true. Very true. I wish I was UUT, man.
Dude, not even Yute has 2 souls. You gotta go higher than Yute.
Yeah, dude. TCG Republic. I'll stop shouting out stores.
Yahoo Auctions.
Nice one. Nice one. Dropping down the early play. He doesn't actually have the climax in hand. I think a little bit weak considering the winds in my deck. I don't know. I don't know if you try to play around wind at all, cause like if that gets winded, it's so bad. You paid a 2 stock for like something that did nothing.
I mean, but is it? I don't know if that's necessarily correct. Like, yeah, it is really bad to like wind on first attack. Or it's really bad if your opponent wins on first attack, because the whole point of playing that early play, if you don't intend to combo, is just to start scrying earlier.
Yeah.
Because it has the when you receive damage, you look at top, leave it or mill it, which is very good. It's a very good way to find cancels in deck states that normally you would take like 6 or more damage. Especially in a deck like AOT, where like that effect is really good against you, because the nature of your top end is you just like ping 1, hit for 2 or 3, ping 1, ping 1, hit for 2 or 3, ping 1. So you'll hit them like 7 or so times for moderate damage, we'll say. Like if you double Mikasa, which means that he has a lot of opportunities to just go through his deck.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, and that eliminates a lot of the randomness of the game, and it exploits what is normally a strength in several smaller attacks.
That's fair. That's fair. But yeah, the down that's the I think that's the what's it called? That's the ceiling. The unfortunate like floor is that if your opponent triggers a wind, or like for that matter, if they even can reverse it now, because like say I cancel one of the attacks and I was able to reverse those combos, you might not see them again. You also spent all your stock. Like that's what I'm worried about. Oh, I also sack here and have 3 cards left in deck and have 2 of those, but
I mean, it's a risk-reward situation at that point. You kind of have to decide if the pressure... oh, misplay. Oh. Never mind. Strictly Broken is a good player. You have to like decide if like playing like that is correct. And you don't have all the answers until after the game's over, obviously, which is a really difficult thing. And since this is a match where you guys are wagering SPs, it could be foolish. It could be perceived as foolish to make a bolder play like that, but it's also like these like high risk, high reward plays are how like tournament players over a long day, like you have to make high risk, high reward plays at a point. You can't just play passively the whole time and do well and be a consistent tournament player.
I agree. I agree. It's like you gotta sometimes like kind of Hail Mary on some turns, because if you win that turn, it's like so big. And like, now I know what you mean. I know what you mean. It's like if he pulled ahead there, for example, I took everything, I would just be in a bad spot and he'd be ahead. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair.
And it could be a thing of like you're at 3-6, your opponent's at like 2-5. You need to do 9 damage to win. You don't have anything, but you recognize, and your opponent's deck is okay. We'll say it's like 6-24. Being able to recognize that going like 3-3-3 or whatever with what you have, like that's kind of a terrible play because you're not expecting to stick 9 damage, but in that scenario, that is all you can do to possibly win.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, that's completely true. I just want to call attention to the sick play the AOT player made, overplaying his back row for the Mikasas. Something
it
you
opens
do.
up the move counter because
Yeah.
saving Mikasas with move counter is really good if you can get your next split 2.
It's like a typical end game thing to deck. If you pull Armin, it's a bit different, cause once you pull Armin, there's other things to consider. But if you don't have the Armin or it's not feasible to Armin, the board with open spot in the back row is like probably the best. Trigger went on first.
Good player.
Woo! Easy.
Why are you gesturing at that?
Dude, that card is busted. Dude, the sign scares me, man.
Yeah, but obviously here it goes back to what you said. Like trigger wind, it's really bad for Railgun. He'll still have one of his scryers, but it's a lot weaker. And it's really smart of you to attack with the Aaron first because it maximizes your chances of it both maximizes your chances of hitting the wind before you do all of your small instances of damage. And also, if you're able to recognize that he has no more climaxes in deck, you take advantage of that deck state. Instead of attacking with a Mikasa, you burn one, and then he gets to scry twice before you get to do anything else.
Yeah.
And then it sticks, so that's it's pretty good.
It's pretty good. Oh, pretty good. Oh, man. Dude, AOT player is just too good at this game, man.
Oh my god, stop flexing.
But yeah, goes for a 5
4.
here. That's a 5 or 4?
Probably a 4, because
I think I put the soul
It-
there. Or
maybe.
I'm not sure.
I mean, if you did put the soul there, I would have bounced the other one if you put the soul there, I think. Right?
That's fair, because then if you double trigger, you'd be overswinging 1.
Yeah, and plus the power, you would want the one with soul and power to be facing the thing to like ensure you get the burn on reverse if you want to burn on reverse.
Yeah, I think I did then. You're right. I think you're right. Or
Yeah.
I could have just made the incorrect choice. I don't remember anymore.
Yeah. So split 2K1 is absolutely broken. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Probably.
I think it's the absolute best climax that they could have given the Mikasa, and I don't know if people realize that.
Yeah, I've said it was standby, but I've like since making that video I made like a week ago, I actually think I think you're right. Like, this is the best one. The standby doesn't do much for what AOT has become.
Yeah, like standby Mikasa changer. That was supposed to be like the dream, right? That like when the set was being spoiled, that's what people were talking about to do stuff like that. I think that's what people were talking about. I know people were talking about standby, and that's what I assumed it was for.
Yeah.
But in this scenario, well, just like with this kind of finisher, like it's really obnoxious to play Kaleidoscope or Idolmaster or Gochiusa. And even though you're burning for ones a bunch, you usually need one of your attacks to stick still. Like you can't just drown them out with ones. And the way you achieve that is by smaller damage. So if you hit someone for like one, then one, and then your Haruka is swinging for three, and you trigger for four, and the first two ones stick, it's probably not totally likely, depending on their deck state. Say in like an average deck state, having that six straight stick is probably no bueno.
Yeah.
And then so with a split 2K1, you can put it on 0, 1, or 2 characters. So you get this insane reach of damage modulation for your board. And the only time that that probably isn't useful is a time when you're so behind that you want soul on all three of your characters. But I don't think that scenario is going to come up as much as opposed to the number of times you'll want to go like 1-2-1 with your Mikasas.
Yeah. You're right. Having AoE 3 damage is like, so say it's like a 1k1 a gate. It's just you're like forced into this less flexible attack order, or like because everything's the same, right? It's like
Yeah. Or if like they leave open lanes to try to force you, like you could leave open lanes against a deck like IMAS or like any of these other huge burn decks. You can leave open lanes assuming you're going to take the burns and making it harder for their open attacks to stick. But in this scenario where you have split 2k1s, if your Mikasa is in an open lane, it's attacking for 3, and if a non-Mikasa, like one Soul Beater's in an open lane, it's attacking for 2, which is much better than being forced to attack for like 4s. Yeah, it's very interesting. A lot of people, I'm sure there's a lot of people who before seeing this video or they'll never see this video, they might think that Door would be the best because everyone just thinks Door is a really good trigger, but it's you have to consider what your climaxes do in your deck as a whole, not just the trigger. Because two soul triggers kind of suck. They're kind of broken. It depends on like if they just canceled your overswing or not. But it gives you like ridiculous reach and control over your damage. So that's something I've noticed when I watch other people play the deck.
Yeah, I would completely agree with your statement. I mean, it's just it's just sometimes, like I think I said in another video before, a two soul trigger is like another swing at 3 sometimes.
Yeah.
Like you play
or,
a
or like or like really early, a two soul trigger can be like a lot of decks. A lot of decks obviously want to be like high 1 damage before they refresh to refresh without the cards in their clock. Just as another form of compression, but randomly like swinging for 4 at level 1, if it sticks, it's really hard for the art player to be put in that position. So that's like a little edge you can get. That's not something you should like. You shouldn't go out your way to put these two soul triggers in your deck because of that. But like it's like yeah. But it's something that can happen, and it's just like a weird edge over a large number of games that you might randomly win more because of.
I'd like to comment, like I just took 5 and I had like 3 climaxes in deck still, and it seems like some people will like get super salty over taking 5, but like keeping in mind it's like super likely to be the last turn. The fact that like I didn't take any wins as damage was like, I was like really happy about that.
Yeah, that's this goes back to winding effects like that early play. It's really good. But at least he got 1 turn of it. Like if you trigger here, he would have at least gotten 1 turn of it. But he, it's weird because it's like, if you do sack and you wind 2 turns in a row, it's like
feels bad, man.
it feels bad for him. But if he only like played it safe and he only played one, and then you still win on that first turn, then he gets like no value out of the card.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you're playing Vivid Strike and you have to play two Fukas just because you know they're going to out one of them. Like you would rather use the extra resources and start building up the advantage from that Fuka that lives than just slow rolling one at a time. Because you just have to do that. You have to play into your opponent's stuff, um, in like in like what would normally be an uncomfortable way. To uh, well, what's that saying? The ends justify the means, I guess. Because you'd rather have like one Fuka with 4 markers because you stuck 2 like
Yeah.
immediately, than no Fuka at all.
I mean, the absolute low would be opponent triggers double wind and then double cancel still. Oh
Yeah.
boy. But that's so unlikely that I think you're right. Like a lot of times people do go double Fuka for that exact reason. And
Yeah, and also if double Fuka goes unanswered, it's really hard to not win.
yeah, I mean that's true. That's very true.
Yeah, I want to go back to the climax thing though, because the Railgun player is playing like 2 door and 2K1s.
Yeah.
And I guess looks like you're deliberating, so maybe I can make this quick. I think door is really bad in Railgun. It's a good trigger, but when it comes to the combo turn, I really like that the 2K1 draws you a card, gives you a bit more damage modulation in late game. It can be really good at level 0 having a 2K1, and if you're in a matchup where you want to double combo with Railgun, it feels really bad to wipe their field and then swing for like a bunch of 4s, because you played a 1K1 into what's now an empty board. And I think like post 2, like against like a decent compression deck, like swinging for 4s, that's not when you want to be doing that. Anyway, good player triggering wins again.
Dude, what can I say, man? World champion, too easy, man.
Yeah, with a completely different deck.
Dude, it's like the same deck.
It's not the same deck, and
And it's done. Strictly Broken TCG just made $50 more for the store off that one game.
but even if you didn't win there, you would still
Stick to 3. Oh, no,
well you would stick 2 unless you triggered a different trigger.
yeah.
Uh,
I mean,
you
I
would
could have
get one
just.
scry, and then you can burn like you get 3 more burns and the Mikasa attacks to try to kill him.
Yeah. I mean, one of the triggers was also a double soul, so I could have just won on the spot. So it's like
Yes.
3 out of 5 puts me in an overwhelmingly favorable position. 3 out of the 5 triggers.
Yeah. So the wind there is a lot less important than the wind from the last turn is all I'm trying to
Yeah.
express, but that's still like a very good scenario to be in if you're just looking at what all the cards on board do and what gets you to your victory faster.
All right. So, Uncle Butts, first time being on the show, I always proceed the game with a little bit of a prompt to kind of get your perspective, get the guest perspective on sort of topics that this video brought up. One thing that we talked about was kind of the double soul trigger, and you elaborated on it a little bit, but so for the longest time, from when I started playing Waze, like the double soul trigger has always been regarded as like the completely most abysmal trigger. What do you think of that statement? And what do you think it is like? What do you think double soul trigger should be treated as it is right now, 2017, this metagame?
Well, it's really hard to gauge it just on the trigger. If I had a choice of what my deck's triggers were consistently, I would probably usually want my decks to have pleasant triggers because it's one of the most pleasant outcomes for an unpleasant experience. Because no one really likes triggering unless you're playing bars or you're so far behind that like you're banking on triggering to get back in the game. But usually, for a lot of people, that means triggering like books or doors. like a plussing trigger, because they're probably more behind in cards than they are in damage. So I don't see myself playing like going out of my way to play a 2 soul trigger because it's random. Like it's really broken when it turns your 3 into a 5 and the 5 sticks. Like that's an amazing feeling. But
Yeah.
it's really bad when it turns your side for 1 into a side for 3 and it's the last attack of the turn or whatever. Like those scenarios really can leave a sour taste in people's mouths. And Railgun is a very finicky deck when it comes to having 2 soul triggers, because one of your main finisher options is a restander. So
Yeah.
that's 2 attacks where that lane's where like your damage math for that lane can be totally ruined.
Yeah. Especially on the first attack, it just makes the second attack garble. Oh, it's sometimes better because you get the side for 1 sometimes, but
Yeah, but it's like, and this is like an extreme scenario, but it's like I've played games with Satin where I attack for 5 and then I attack for 7. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. Because it becomes a thing of like, it's like very specific scenarios where I attack with the Satin, I attack with my air stuff, and when I come to my second Satin attack, they're at like 3/3, so it's like, well, I can't side here because I would do less than 4 damage.
yeah.
And then I attack, and then it becomes an attack for 7, and I could have sided, and it's like, grr. Like it's very frustrating when that kind of stuff happens. But when like the best, like 2 soul triggers feel the best when it's an attack that doesn't matter. Because and this is like a fallacious thing. It's not like this is how it always happens, but this is how I imagine most 2 soul triggers sticking. You're like attacking for 2. You're like your opponent's like 2/2 or something, and you're like 2/1, and you attack for 2, and you hit a 2 soul trigger, and the 4 sticks. Like that's kind of a big deal, I think.
It's like kind
Or
of like
if you trigger a 2 soul on a turn where you don't play a climax, it's kind of like you just played a climax.
yeah. It's sometimes those moments are like they're pretty swingy, and I think sometimes they swing because damage is ultimately what matters, not the plus. Sometimes
Yeah.
they swing a game in your favor, while a gate kind of is like the ultimate consistency trigger, right? You trigger it and you have a better game, like for yourself. But like sometimes the 2 soul trigger just happening and sticking, like you said, it's just it kind of warps a game sometimes to that point, even to that
Yeah.
extreme. So
I've also gone back and forth in Nisekoi a lot with what triggers I've played because sometimes I have games where I'm playing Stock Souls because I'm playing Stock Souls and Empty Trigger. That's one of my favorite like empty climaxes because it's such a good on play effect, especially for a deck like Nisekoi where there's a pretty decent stock overhead during the early mid game.
yeah,
But Nisekoi is a deck with a restander, a really famous restander, and that's still a moment when those 2 soul triggers can suck.
fair enough, fair enough, fair enough. All right, all right. Moving on. So the last question I kind of want to prompt you with is, I think we won't touch on this part because the first half of the question I wanted to ask, because I think undisputedly, if you're not taking AOT to an English tournament, you should be taking Sword Art Online. It's like almost undisputable. I mean, Tulavru, Kantai are decks you can take, but there's no single deck that's better than AOT, and if not AOT, Sao right now for English, right?
Yeah, I mean, that to me that might be a little misleading of a statement. Um, if you are listening to this and you're a very competitive player, you want to go to these things and you want to actually qualify, you want to participate in a high level White Force thing, and you want to make top 8, you want to get top 3, you want to do the whole experience, you want to go to
Japan.
Worlds,
Yeah.
you actually want to win, you have that drive in you. I think you should be playing AOT, and if you can't get AOT because of availability, because it is a bit difficult right now to get the cards because there's a lot of people who want AOT cards, you should be playing Sao.
Yes.
So I agree with that, but I wouldn't. If you're a casual player or you don't have like
you just love
300,
Aqua.
yeah,
It's just,
if you don't have like $300 to drop on a deck just for like the one regional a year you go to, and it's something you do with your friends, I would not pressure someone like that to buy AOT, uh, unless they really like AOT, or if someone has like a set one deck and they don't know if they should upgrade it or not. I think they should upgrade it.
Yeah.
Um, but strictly speaking to
The
uh,
competitive.
a competitive player who is like a tourney grinder who wants to do really well, I do believe they should be playing Attack on Titan.
All right, for English. But let's talk a little bit about Japan. And let's make this brief. I don't want to go too far along. What do you think AOT, because it's just really good in English right now for the competitive side. For the competitive Japanese side, how do you think AOT does in the current field?
Decks I think of when I think of Japanese, like decks that have been doing fairly well this WGP circuit in English, or in America, I should say. It's the Japanese format. Um, I think of Vivid Strike. I think of ReZero. I think of Guardian. I'm not sure how well Guardian's been doing actually, but it's just a deck I think of as like a very good deck. And I think of Persona. I think those are all decks that have been having a pretty good
Results.
representation and results. Konosuba has had a pretty absurd like representation to results yielded. So I could also touch on that too, but primarily, so ReZero doesn't have an on reverse combo. I think that's a pretty good position to be in against Attack on Titan, because even though Aaron is still a +2 for the Attack on Titan player, it means that Aaron doesn't directly interfere with your game plan, at least your early game plan. I would say the same about Guardian as well, and some variants of Persona, like variants of Persona that choose to not play the 2-1 Joker.
Holy, the Aaron bonks on the 2-1 Joker and the
Yeah.
move counter. Holy, that actually feels bad.
Yeah, and then because I mentioned it, I may as well elaborate. Konosuba, the Goddess build, and the Yun Maguro builds, neither of those are affected by the by Aaron bouncing to hand or move counter as far as those decks getting their advantage.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. The one thing I will add is that, like, it seems like pretty level playing field because AOT doesn't interact with their one game.
Yeah.
But the finisher is still just above average, and that's the one thing these decks should probably look out for.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm getting to. Vivid Strike, I think, is a deck that will just really die unless it sacks without getting its reverses with Einhardt. Because it, like, the nature of the deck between bars and having Ricky and what your Brainstorm does, it's very hard to not get your combo consistently over a large number of games. So both, I think, players won't be as prepared to be in a scenario where maybe 3 times in a tournament they play AOT. If it's like a really high AOT representation tournament, they might not have the experience to know what to do when they don't have their reverses. And I just think the deck does it can be very hard if you don't get your combo for Vivid Strike, because it feels like when I play the deck, I'm writing on the absolute limits of how many cards I have in hand and how much stock I have to do everything I need to do. And not having enough cards in hand, not having enough playables to get out double Fuka can be a very difficult position for Vivid Strike against a deck like Attack on Titan, because there's both wind triggers, and even if you put that Fuka in center with the hexproof to center, I would assume that Japanese Titan players are playing the 2-1 Aaron Titan stock bomb, because that sort of card is a much more relevant thing to consider in Japan and Japanese meta than English meta currently.
And you have the memory kick counter, so you got 3 outs, 3 efficient outs to it. Yeah, because you can go like move Mikasa, memory kick counter, right?
Yes.
It's a pretty good turn, pretty good play. It's yeah, I just think Vivid Strike gets kind of bullied by AOT a bit. You're completely right on that. Anything you else want to touch on how AOT influences Japanese?
It's kind of hard to gauge Japanese, I think, as a whole, because there's, I don't know, like over 100 boosters. I don't know how many series there are, but there's there's so many cards, and at the end of the day, the nature of Weiss is still often driven like it's an anime card game. Like people play a lot of the times people play the sets they're playing because they're a fan of that work, which is another reason why I think it's hard. It's a lot hard to plan for Japanese than English because a lot of the English decks are kind of whatever. Like a few of those decks are threatening, but there's quite a few Japanese decks that are like what's the word? Good. Uh, something that you might need to look out for. But there's just so many, and metagames are just not going to have every one of those decks. Like you could play like you're gonna take Ilya or whatever, and you play your Ilya deck like 200 times, and like 100 of those times are against Guardian because you think that's the best deck, and then 50 of those times are against ReZero, and 50 of those times are against Vivid Strike because you think those are the best decks, and then the event you end up going to, you play none of those decks
Which is very
because
likely. Yeah.
yeah, because at like a 40-person tournament, there might be like 2 Guardian players, 3 ReZero players, and 1 Vivid Strike player, and you dodged all of them, which is, fairly possible because that's 6 or 7 people out of 40. And then you end up losing because you play against Kill a Kill, you play against Love Live, you play against Persona, you play against Kimono Friends or
Railgun.
Konosuba, Sword Art,
Konosuba.
Railgun,
Yeah.
Idolmaster. Like it's a lot harder to actually do the prep work in how many decks you need to test against
Right.
in Japanese, and it's a lot harder to know what a tournament turnout is going to be unless you play in that meta a lot and you've like intimately studied it.
All right. Yeah. That is. That's a really good nugget of information. I think that's very valuable to keep in mind. If you're gonna be competitive about this game, unless you can cover your tracks on every deck, you're not gonna be able to cover your tracks on everything. It's just the spread is too wide, and a lot of people don't even have access to be able to play against everything. So you make a very valid point there, and I'm gonna close it off now. We're nearing the end of this video. I really appreciate Butts and Coconuts for coming on for the first episode of season 2 of Strictly Locals. Thank you for coming, my dude. You want to shout out your stuff?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. So I haven't actually written a blog in a long time, but I do have a blog site if you want to check out some of my old articles. Um, lunchbeforews.wordpress.com. On there, I have like deck text talking about metagaming, stuff about having a more proper mentality for being a competitive gamer. It's all in caps lock, but it's not supposed to be a troll blog. It comes from a very sincere place. I was just kind of bored when I started it, and I kind of developed this character around it. There's also 2 episodes of this podcast I did. One talking about the impact of the ban list, and another talking about the Love Live Sunshine Extra Booster. You could check those out. And I also started a YouTube channel. I don't have a custom URL, so it's a bunch of numbers and letters. I'll have to have UA put that in the description.
And
But
I
I'm
will.
going to try to regularly, not like weekly, but maybe like once or twice a month. I'm posting something with a partner of mine, and we're just talking about meta decks and how they develop and sort of the idea of how these decks end up developing.
Check that out. I would recommend you guys check it out. It's some good content, and they're moving towards making it kind of like a pseudo series. So, yeah, check out his YouTube channel. It will be in the link in the description below. Just to end this call, I will say this: if you go to WGP, maybe you won't see as much AOC as you think you will, because if you can build it in English, why build it in Japanese? You know what I mean? But yeah, that's it for today. This episode of Strictly Locals. Once again, thanks for coming on the show, Mr. Butts. And yeah, Strictly Broken signing off. I'll see you guys next time.